The wagon from back east. The wind on the Wyoming plains never seemed to rest. Even in spring, when snowmelt should have softened the air, it cut sharp as a knife, carrying grit and the lonely whistle of wide, empty country. Matthew Harlow leaned against the hitching rail outside the telegraph office of Red Butte, his hat tugged low to keep the dust from his eyes. He squinted at the horizon, his stomach knotted tighter than it had been the day he signed papers on his land claim. He had faced blizzards, wolves, rustlers, and years of working his ranch alone, but nothing unsettled him like this moment. The stagecoach was due. Matt's mail-order bride was arriving today. The idea still sounded strange even to himself, though he had turned it over in his head for the better part of a year. 35 years old, owner of 200 acres and enough cattle to trade, he should have had no shortage of pride. And yet every night when the fire burned low, and the walls of his cabin echoed hollow around him, the silence pressed heavier than stone. Neighbors were scarce. Women scarcer still. And so, after much hesitation, he had answered an advertisement printed in the back of an Ohio newspaper. God-fearing woman of good health, 22 years of age. Seeks honest man of steady means. Ready to build a home, to work, and to love. She signed it Eleanor Whitfield. Her letters, though short, were written in a tidy hand. She asked little about luxuries, more about the land and his faith. He pictured a gentle girl, maybe shy, maybe frightened, but willing to stand beside him in this rough country. He had sent her the fare. She had sent her agreement. And now she was on her way. The creak of wagon wheels pulled his attention. A cloud of dust rose on the road. The stagecoach rattled into Red Butte, drawn by a team of lather horses, the driver's whip snapping overhead. "Red Butte!" the driver shouted. 10 minutes for waterin' and changin' teams. Matt stood straighter, heart hammering against his ribs. He tugged his coat, wiped his palms on his trousers. Around him, townsfolk paused. 2 boys near the smithy, an older woman with a basket, even the drunk who usually slept outside the saloon. News traveled fast in small places. Most knew Matthew Harlow was meeting his bride today. The coach rocked to a halt. For a breath, nothing happened. Then the door swung open with a squeal of hinges. A boot descended, larger than he expected. The hem of a green traveling gown followed, fabric stretched taut across wide hips. And then, in one steady motion, she filled the doorway. Matt's jaw went slack. The woman who stepped down was unlike any bride he had ever pictured. She was tall, half a head taller than him, easy. Broad of shoulder, thick of arm, her very presence seemed to cast a shadow over the street. The bonnet perched on her head looked too small, and the carpetbag in her grasp resembled a child's toy against her gloved hand. Her cheeks were flushed, whether from travel or nerves he could not tell. But her eyes, steel gray and sharp, fixed directly on him. She came forward with a deliberate, heavy tread, the boards of the wooden sidewalk creaking under her weight. When she reached him, she spoke in a low, even voice that carried easily. "Mr. Harlow?" Matt swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Matthew Harlow." She gave a single, firm nod. "Eleanor Whitfield. Your bride." The words seemed to echo, though she spoke them plain. Bride. He had pictured a smaller woman, one he could shelter, one who might need his strength. Instead, this woman looked as though she could chop wood beside him, plow the field, and wrestle a steer if the need arose. For a long moment, he simply stared. Her brow furrowed. Then, unexpectedly, her lips curved into a wry smile. "You look surprised, Mr. Harlow." Heat rushed to his ears. He fumbled for words. "I wasn't expectin' you to be quite so big," she supplied, arching one dark brow. His face burned. "I was gonna say, tall." Her laugh startled him. It rolled out rich and genuine, carrying down the street. A few onlookers ducked their heads, grinning, as though relieved someone had broken the tension. "Well," she said, "better tall than timid, I reckon. Shall we?" She gestured to the wagon he had waiting by the livery. Matt blinked. Yes. Yes, ma'am." Before he could offer his hand, she strode toward it, lifting her carpetbag with ease. In one smooth movement, she swung it into the wagon bed, then hauled herself up with a strength that made the wood groan. She sat upright on the bench, hands folded, waiting for him as if daring him to object. Still dazed, Matt climbed beside her, gathered the reins, and clucked the team into motion. The prairie rolled out before them, miles of open land, scattered sage, distant cattle grazing under the slanting sun. For a while, the only sounds were the creak of wagon wheels and the steady plod of hooves. Matt stole glances at the woman beside him. Eleanor Whitfield. She filled the space, her shoulders squared, her posture straight as a fence post. She was not fidgeting, not fluttering like the nervous bride he had half expected. She was composed. Unapologetically so. At last, he cleared his throat. "I hope the journey wasn't too hard on you." "I've had harder," she answered simply. "You've traveled far, then?" "Ohio to St. Louis by train. St. Louis to Cheyenne by freight wagon. Cheyenne to here, piece by piece. Long days, but I knew what I was coming to." She turned her head, eyes narrowing slightly. "Did you?" Her question cut sharper than the wind. He tightened his grip on the reins. "I thought I did." Her expression softened, but she said nothing more. Silence stretched, but not unkindly, more like two people testing the edges of unfamiliar ground. After a time, she spoke again. "Your letters were short. Plain. Few words. I'm not a man of many words." "So I gathered." She studied him openly, gray eyes measuring. "But they were honest." He exhaled, relief easing the knot in his chest. "I tried to be." "That's why I came," she said, turning her gaze back to the horizon. They reached his ranch as the sun dropped low, painting the sky with streaks of crimson and gold. The land stretched wide, rolling pasture, a scattering of cattle, the wind tugging at the tall grass. His cabin stood sturdy but simple against the sweep of land. A corral circled near the barn, and smoke curled from the chimney where he had banked the fire that morning. Eleanor climbed down from the wagon without waiting for help. She planted her boots firmly in the dirt and looked over the spread in silence. At last, she nodded. "It'll do." Matt blinked. "It'll do. For starting," she clarified. "A home isn't built in a day. Or a year. But this has the bones." He wasn't sure whether to bristle or laugh. He settled on carrying her carpetbag inside. The cabin, a single large room with a loft for storage, suddenly felt smaller with her inside. She examined it without fuss. Fireplace, bed, shelves, table. Finally, she turned to him, her expression unreadable. "You live neat, Mr. Harlow." "Try to," he said cautiously. "Good. A woman can add warmth to neatness." "But neatness," she gave a small approving nod, "that's a strong start." He scratched at the back of his neck. "I wasn't sure what you'd expect of me." She stepped closer, her presence filling the space, though her voice was gentle. "Honesty. Respect. A fair chance. That's all." Her eyes held his steadily. And for the first time since the coach door opened, Matt felt his chest ease. Perhaps she wasn't what he had pictured. But perhaps what he hadn't pictured was exactly what he needed. That night, he lay awake in the rocker by the fire while she slept on the bed, her breathing steady. The cabin no longer echoed with emptiness. And though nothing about Eleanor Whitfield was what he imagined, one thought settled deep in his bones as the firelight flickered low. This was the beginning of something he had never dared to hope for. A woman of strength. The first morning came early. Matt was used to rising before dawn, but when he stirred from the rocker where he had dozed, he found the fire already stoked and the smell of frying bacon drifting through the cabin. He blinked in the dim light. Eleanor stood at the hearth, apron tied over her green traveling dress, hair braided back tight. She handled the iron skillet with practiced ease, humming softly to herself as though she had been cooking in this kitchen for years. "You're up," she said without turning, as if she had heard him stir. Matt sat forward, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "You didn't have to." "You'll find I don't wait on permission, Mr. Harlow," she interrupted, her tone calm but firm. "If this is my home now, I'll see it run proper." He shut his mouth. Part of him wanted to argue. His cabin, his rules, but another part recognized the comfort of waking to a warm fire and breakfast already on the stove. She plated the food and set it before him, eggs, bacon, bread toasted on the skillet. Then she poured him coffee as if she had done it 1,000 mornings before. Matt cleared his throat. "You cook well." "I've been feeding farmhands since I was 12, she said simply. Then, meeting his gaze, she added, "Don't get too used to flattery. I expect help, not praise." Her words caught him off guard. Women he had known in passing, saloon girls, settlers' wives, either simpered for attention or demanded to be coddled. Eleanor demanded partnership. It unsettled him, but it also stirred something like respect. After breakfast, Matt set out for the day's work. Fences needed mending along the north pasture, and a few calves had slipped through broken rails. He gathered tools, expecting Eleanor to remain in the cabin and settle her things. Instead, she appeared at his side in boots and a work coat, her sleeves rolled, ready for labor. "You plan on comin'?" he asked, startled. "Of course," she replied, hefting a coil of wire that would have strained a smaller woman. "You didn't bring me here to sit idle, did you?" Matt frowned. "Most women—" "I'm not most women," she cut in, her gray eyes flashing. He believed her. They rode out together, the wagon creaking under the load of posts and tools. The prairie stretched endless around them, sky a pale blue dome overhead. Matt tried not to stare as Eleanor drove nails into posts with a hammer as heavy as his own, arms steady, strokes sure. Sweat dampened her hairline, but she did not complain. By noon, they had reset 20 yards of fence. Matt leaned against a post, wiping his brow. "You handle a hammer well," he admitted. She gave a half-smile, not pausing in her work. "My father built barns back in Ohio. I was his biggest child. He put me to use." Matt chuckled softly despite himself. "Biggest child, eh?" "4 brothers, 2 sisters," she said, finally straightening. "None of them could lift near what I could. Father said God gave me size for a reason, and I'd best not waste it." Her words lingered. Matt studied her profile, the determination in her jaw, the strength in her frame. She wasn't delicate, no. But perhaps delicate was never what he needed. That evening, when they returned to the cabin, Eleanor did not collapse from weariness. Instead, she washed, cooked a simple stew, and afterward sat with mending in her lap as though such labor were natural. Matt, unused to another's presence, found himself pacing, restless. At last he stopped. "Why did you come?" he asked bluntly. Her needle paused. She looked up at him, expression thoughtful. "You told the truth," she said. "In your letters, you didn't promise riches or comfort. You promised honesty. That was enough." Matt frowned. "But you left everything you knew, family, friends, for a stranger." Her gaze did not waver. "I had family, yes. But no place. No husband, no children. Back there, I was too big, too loud, too much for men to look at twice. Here, maybe I can be exactly what I am, and it will be enough." The silence that followed pressed heavy. For the first time, Matt understood the courage it had taken for her to come. He had thought himself the brave one, sending for a wife. But she had crossed a continent on faith alone. He felt humbled. Days turned to weeks. Eleanor's presence changed the rhythm of the ranch in ways Matt hadn't expected. She rose early, kept the cabin tidy, and cooked meals heartier than he'd ever managed. But she also joined him in the fields, driving cattle, hauling water, swinging an axe. She moved with strength and purpose, never shying from hard work. At first, Matt worried the neighbors would gossip. And they did. At Sunday service in Red Butte, he heard the whispers. "That can't be his wife. She's near a giant. Poor fellow looks like a child standin' beside her. She'll break him in two if he ain't careful." Matt stiffened under the stares. But when Eleanor walked into the church, shoulders straight, chin high, the whispers faltered. Her sheer presence demanded silence. She knelt, prayed, and sang the hymns in a voice that filled the small wooden room. Matt found himself standing taller beside her. One afternoon, a storm rolled sudden over the plains, fierce and fast. Lightning cracked, spooking the cattle. A small herd broke through the far fence, stampeding toward the creek. Matt leapt on his horse, shouting for Eleanor to stay behind. She didn't listen. By the time he reached the creek, rain pelting, thunder roaring, Eleanor was already waist-deep in the rushing water, driving the cattle back with wild shouts and swinging arms. Her skirts clung heavy, mud streaked her face, but her eyes burned with determination. "Get him left!" she hollered over the storm. Together they turned the herd, forcing the beasts back toward safety. By the time it was done, they were soaked, shivering, and covered in mud, but the cattle were safe. Matt swung down from his horse, breath ragged. "You could have been killed," he snapped, fear sharpening his voice. Eleanor planted her fists on her hips, hair plastered to her face. "And you think I'd let you face that alone?" He stared at her, chest heaving. Slowly, the anger drained, leaving only awe. She was unlike anyone he had ever known. And she was his. That night, as they sat by the fire drying their clothes, Eleanor spoke softly. "You don't need to be ashamed of me, Matt." He glanced up, startled. "Ashamed? I see how folks look. How you worry." Her voice was steady, though her eyes flickered with something vulnerable. "But I didn't come here to fit into their picture of a wife. I came here for you." His throat tightened. Words came hard, but he forced them out. "I ain't ashamed. Truth is, I don't know how I got by without you." For a long moment, they held each other's gaze, the fire crackling low between them. Something shifted in that silence, something deeper than mere partnership, something steadier than convenience. Matt realized then that this woman, twice his size and twice his strength, had already claimed more than just a place in his cabin. She had claimed a place in his heart. Tested by fire and winter, the Wyoming summer passed swiftly, and with it came a measure of peace. Eleanor fit into life on the ranch as though she had been born to it. She split logs, mended shirts, cooked stews that carried Matt through the longest days, and rode the pastures with a skill that astonished him. Matt found himself depending on her in ways he hadn't expected, not because she demanded it, but because she met every task with such unflinching certainty. Where he faltered, she steadied. Where he doubted, she acted. Yet with autumn came whispers of trouble. Rustlers. Cattle had gone missing from nearby ranches. Neighbors grumbled in town, tempers ran hot, but no one had caught the thieves yet. Matt had heard their names muttered. 3 brothers out of Dakota, hard men with quick tempers. He told himself his herd was safe. His land was wide, his fences strong, and he and Eleanor rode it daily. But in his heart, he knew trouble always came sooner or later. And it did. It was near dusk when the dogs barked, sharp and urgent. Matt stepped from the barn, lantern in hand, and froze. Out by the corral, figures moved, 3 of them, shadows against the fading sky. One swung a rope, another already driving cattle toward the open gate. "Rustlers," Matt hissed. He reached for the rifle by the door. But before he could shout, Eleanor was there, her face set like stone. "I'll drive them back," she said. "You'll do no such thing," Matt snapped. "These men won't think twice about shootin'." Her gray eyes burned. "And you think I'll let you stand alone against 3? Before he could stop her, she had grabbed the shotgun from above the hearth and strode out into the yard, lantern light glinting on her wet hair. Matt cursed under his breath, snatched his rifle, and followed. "Hold it right there." Matt's voice rang sharp across the corral. The men turned, caught in the lantern glow. Rough faces, ragged coats, guns at their hips. One sneered. "Well, if it ain't the little rancher. Thought you'd be too scrawny to put up a fight." Laughter followed, mean and hollow. Then their eyes slid to Eleanor. For a heartbeat, silence fell. The tallest rustler barked out a laugh. "Holy hell, look at this. The man went and married a mountain." The others hooted, their laughter scraping like knives. Matt's jaw clenched, anger flashing hot. But before he could speak, Eleanor stepped forward, the shotgun cradled steady in her arms. "Take one more step," she said, her voice low and clear, "and I'll lay you flat in this dirt." Her words struck like iron. The men faltered, their smirks fading. Something in her stance, in her utter fearlessness, made them hesitate. The leader spat, eyes narrowing. "You wouldn't." Eleanor cocked the shotgun. The sound cracked the night air. "Try me." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Matt raised his rifle. "She won't miss. And neither will I." The standoff stretched, the cattle lowing nervously in the corral. At last, the rustlers cursed under their breath. "This ain't worth it," one muttered. "Fine," the leader growled. "But this ain't the end. You'll see us again." They backed away, melted into the night, and were gone. Matt exhaled, his hands shaking with the aftershock of what nearly happened. He turned to Eleanor. She stood steady, shotgun lowered but ready, her breath calm. "God Almighty, woman," he said, voice raw. "You could have been killed." Her gaze softened. "And you think I'd let you face them alone?" The same words she had spoken at the creek. The same fierce loyalty that had already saved him once. He set down his rifle and reached for her, pulling her into his arms without thought. For a moment she stiffened, then melted against him, her strength pressed solid and warm. "You're something else," he murmured into her hair. "I'm only what I've always been," she whispered back. "It just took the right man to see it." The threat passed, but winter soon came with teeth. Snow buried the plains, the wind howled through the cracks in the cabin walls, and survival became a daily battle. Yet where Matt once would have struggled alone, now he had Eleanor. She hauled water through the drifts, chopped wood with swings that split logs clean, and kept the fire blazing. She stitched quilts from old cloth, filled the cabin with warmth and order, and steadied Matt's spirits when the night stretched long. There were moments of laughter, too. She teased him about his cooking when he tried to help. He teased her about scaring the preacher with her booming hymn singing. Slowly, the distance between them narrowed. One night, as the storm raged outside, Matt sat watching her sew by firelight. The lines of her face, strong yet softened by the glow, struck him with sudden force. "Eleanor," he said quietly, "are you happy here?" She looked up, needle paused, eyes thoughtful. "I am," she said simply. Then, after a moment, "Are you?" He swallowed. "I thought I wanted someone smaller, someone I could protect. But I see now, what I needed was someone who could stand beside me." Her eyes softened, shimmering in the firelight. "Then you're happy." Matt rose, crossing the room in 3 strides. He knelt before her, taking her large, calloused hands in his. "Happier than I ever thought I'd be," he said. "I sent for a bride, thinkin' I'd gain a helper. What I got was a partner. And if you'll have me, not just as a husband in name, but in truth, I'd be honored." For a moment, silence filled the cabin, broken only by the storm. Then Eleanor leaned forward, cupping his face in her hands, her touch gentle despite her strength. "You already have me, Matthew Harlow," she whispered. And then she kissed him. It was not shy, not delicate. It was steady, sure, full of the strength that defined her. Matt returned it, his arms wrapping around her, pulling her close. In that moment, the storm outside vanished. There was only the warmth of the fire, the beat of her heart, and the certainty that he had found what he had been searching for all his life. By spring, their herd had grown, the land had endured, and word of the rustlers faded. Life on the ranch was still hard, still lonely at times, but no longer empty. Neighbors who once whispered began to nod in respect when Eleanor rode past, her presence as commanding as any rancher's. Some still chuckled behind their hands, but Matt no longer heard them. His pride in her ran too deep. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the plains in gold, Eleanor stood on the porch, gazing at the horizon. Matt stepped beside her, slipping his hand into hers. "You ever regret comin'?" he asked softly. She squeezed his hand, her smile slow and certain. "Not for a single breath." And Matt, looking out over the land he had once ruled alone, realized the truth of it. He had sent for a wife, hoping to fill the silence of his days. What he had gained was far more, a woman of unshakable strength, of fierce loyalty, of unexpected tenderness. His bride, his partner, his heart. The loner rancher was lonely no more.